I have been wondering how many people, or maybe what percentage of people in Sacramento depend on public transportation, don't own a car or can't use a car or whatever that means. And I don't know. I would love to find out. I do know that 40,000 ride our light rail every week. And 37, thank you, Dwight, ride the SAC RT, the rapid transit buses. So that's almost, what? Almost 80,000 people right there every week. Now, I imagine some of that may be crossover. But that by itself is an awful lot of people whose welfare depends on that transportation. Who knows what this is? Huh? Yeah. That right there is the Capitol Corridor train. How many of you have taken it anywhere? Wow, more than I expected. When I was the pastor in Walnut Creek, one of the pastors in Walnut Creek, one of my members worked for the state here, and he commuted every single day. Came here on the Capitol Corridor, got home on the Capitol Corridor. And that used to kind of blow my mind, like, wow, Sacramento's so far. It felt like it. It just felt like it. But last fall, when Paul and I went to Spain, we took an Uber to the Capitol Corridor train and took the train into Emeryville so we could get to SFO via the BART, right? It was so much easier. It was a breeze on the train. It was like barely a little over an hour, right? It was pretty good. It was really good. So now I would not hesitate, right? Only because I did it. How many of you have seen one of these lying around your neighborhood? Almost everybody. Good. You know what that is? That's a jump bike. Yep. You know what a jump bike is? You're supposed to jump on it and go, right? It's a shared bike, basically. Community shared bike. You know what these are? There was one parked outside when I got here. Is it still there? There's usually two there, or right here on Murrieta Street, right? What is it? A gig car. Okay, these little ones with the blue sign is the gig car. You know what gig stands for? Get in and go. It's a way to share cars if you haven't got one, right? You get in, you go. Let's hope you have a driver's license. And then, you know, these, you thought a lime was for guacamole. This is a lime. A lime is what? An e-scooter. These are electric kick scooters, and 10,000 of them were just let loose on the streets of San Francisco as part B of a great experiment of what's going to happen in the city with thousands and thousands of these racing around. You know that? They will be here soon, right? I mean, they're already here, but I mean in those kind of numbers. So we'll let San Francisco go first. But they actually say they have figured an awful lot out that they, you know, didn't anticipate on the first rollout of these. How many of you have taken an Uber or a Lyft? Okay, quite a few of you. I know of at least one of our members who drives for both Uber and Lyft, right? Sam Vidividi does. What? Oh, there they are, Uber and Lyft. And how do you know a Lyft car? It's got a big mustache. A big, bright pink mustache, right? So what do all of these have in common, these last 4 things? What was that, Lois? Yes. They're all ways to share rides, right? And they're all pretty new. They weren't here just a few years ago, right? They're all new ways for people who either don't have a car, unable to use a car, to be able to get around without that. They're new. And a lot of people aren't used to them yet. A lot of people haven't tried it yet. I haven't. Well, just Uber, and I don't even have the app. I'm always with somebody who does. So, but that'll come. I'm sure that'll come. We're pretty dependent on our cars, aren't we? I mean, very deeply dependent on our cars. And it's proving not to be such a good thing for the planet. Peeling us away from our cars is really hard. We like that individualism where I get to decide when and where I go and how, right? And that's part of what's so hard for us when we are forced to give that up by something. But we're pretty dependent on our cars. How do you think our lives are dependent on transportation? How important is transportation, getting around, to our everyday lives? What do we need to get around for? Work? Food? What was that? Appointments? Church, worship, thank you. Thank you. Picking up kids at school. Do you know that the number of children who walk to school has dropped dramatically across this country? Kids get driven to school, no matter how close they live. Think about that. How else do we depend on transportation? A social life. Thank you, Carolyn. Going out, getting places, right? Jean? You're recommending paratransit and? Yes, yes. We do have some specialized transit opportunities like paratransit and there's another one, I'm forgetting the name. Oh, the Asian Community Center offers transportation. Wonderful. And they do that because transportation is key, isn't it? What we just said to one another is that safe and reliable transportation is part of the equation of abundant life. God's will. Does that surprise you? But we're a long ways from safe and reliable transportation here in Sacramento, aren't we? How do you think we do as drivers here? Yep. Yep. Worst drivers in the nation. When I moved here, my cousin who had lived here for 30 years warned me, Renae, they always, you all always complain about the Bay Area traffic. It's bad here too. And she said, they run red lights here like none other, right? In the Bay Area, we used to call it gold rush. When the light turns yellow, you speed up. That's the gold rush. Well, it's red here when people speed up, right? So last year, QuoteWizard, which is an insurance marketplace group, they compiled a whole lot of data. I mean, just millions of data points from all over the country from 2016. And so they were looking at traffic accidents, DUIs, citations, just about anything you would get pulled over for. And they compiled it all, and they looked at the 75 most populated cities in the United States. Okay, so our largest cities that have the most traffic, they looked at all that data, and guess what? We won! So you're absolutely right. Yeah, who said woo-hoo? We are the worst, we have the worst driving record in the country for a city as impacted as we are with our number of people, right? So does that surprise anybody here? And maybe that's even sadder, right? That we know it, and it still goes on. Some of you will remember that very tragic day, January 31st, 2018, when a woman, Chang Zhu, probably not pronouncing that correctly, but she and her little 6-year-old grandson were crossing the street here at Oregon, across Freeport Boulevard, when they were hit by a car. The 22-year-old driver took off. Hours later, he did turn himself in. But Chang died of her injuries 10 days later. You remember that? Somebody, very soon after her death, somebody put up a little memorial there. It had a little cross and flowers, which remained there for way more than a year. And I remember when I first noticed it, I felt a little pang, and I thought, I wish that had been one of us that had put a memorial to remember her. That was a tragic, shocking event for this neighborhood. This neighborhood. A traffic light would be better. Well, here's what we learned in the days that followed the accident. We learned that there had been a crosswalk there, and it was removed in November. This happened in January. In November, there was a crosswalk, and the city removed it. Why in the world would they do that? Well, I'll tell you. Because they were working with a federal policy that understands that if there's a crosswalk somewhere that is called unsupported, in other words, there are no traffic lights there, there's no stop sign there, there's no little flashing lights on the crosswalk, nothing like that. An unsupported crosswalk on a boulevard as busy and as fast as Freeport is more of a danger because it lures people to think, I'm safe if I'm in this crosswalk. And so the city had eliminated 20-something crosswalks over the course of 4 years to be in compliance with that policy. I don't know what to think. Do people, are people more careful when there's a crosswalk of any kind? Do people really walk all the way down 2 blocks down to the next big light to cross the street? A light at this, at Oregon would cost $500,000. $500,000 was the estimate at the time to put a light there if we wanted a crosswalk plus a light. How do people behave? It's kind of hard to anticipate that, isn't it? So am I staying in our lane of discipleship? Where's God in all of this? God's right in the midst of it all. You remember last week where the prophet Jeremiah shared God's command with God's people, seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. It may not be your home, but you're there. Seek its welfare. And the Apostle Paul actually said basically the same thing, even though he did it in a very, very different way. It was Paul who helped the earliest Christians understand that Jesus didn't rise from the dead so a few individuals could slide into heaven. Jesus rose from the dead to bring everyone and everything new life. He rose to start a new creation. Paul called him the first fruits of the new creation. And his mission is now our mission. And John Wesley got that. Hands and heart together is what Christian discipleship is about. And John Wesley said, there is no holiness but social holiness. In other words, there's nothing holy about us unless it hits the ground, unless it's happening in real life, unless we're burning and stuff is changing. In other words, the United Methodist mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. That's what Paul and Jeremiah and Wesley were talking about. Our burning is the transformation of any system that denies the children of God abundant life. Look at these two jaywalking, a man and a little boy. How are people going to behave? If you ask the people in this neighborhood, they will tell you that they are very concerned. They want to be able to cross streets safely here. They want to be able to have their kids walk to school safely here. And some of our neighbors got very energized after that terrible accident, one of whom some of you know very well, John Meredith Simkowitz, my good buddy in the neighborhood. John was very concerned, and he took his concerns to the Hollywood Park Neighborhood Association, which he had kind of revolutionized. And together, they created something new. They created the Freeport Transportation Safety Committee. And that committee is working on Sacramento's 2040 general plan is being updated. And so their work is to give input and change that plan in the effort to transform how life is lived here. How life gets lived here. So one of the things they did was they had a walk. You see them walking through the neighborhood? They organized a walking audit, a traffic walking audit. And they gathered on a Saturday morning and got set up, and they went out and talked to everyone they found who was walking around. They talked to drivers after they had parked in the parking areas and things like that. And they got as much information as they could. And then they began to organize themselves. And they have actually 5 subcommittees now. Advocacy, where they are going to be, oh, actually there's more. Publishing should be up there. Publishing, they're going to publish the results of their walking survey. And then advocacy, they invite people to write letters to the city to impact that plan and to go to the meetings, the city council meetings where the plan is being acted on. They have, for media, they have a Facebook page and a website. Oh, I see what I did. They have events, an events subcommittee, and you know what their events are? Quarterly cleanups here along the Freeport Boulevard corridor. I would love for us to be part of those cleanups. That's their events, and they also are working directly with the schools here in Hollywood Park to have walk-to-school days that are advertised where people will know, the children and parents will be walking to school. So they've become very, very active. And I'm very proud to tell you that when they organized, they used us as our campus here as their first site to gather and get together and work on that walking audit. I hope we will offer more than that. I'm glad we did, but I hope we'll offer more than that, because the beloved community that we are called to build together is a safe community for everyone. And so if you have any inclination that God may be calling you to that committee or any of those subcommittees or to work together with them, please let me know, and I will be so happy to help you get connected to grassroots transformation of how life is lived here. That is how we burn. And as Pamela brings us this beautiful song, I hope you will pray for our neighbors here, and not only in this neighborhood, but Land Park, Southland Park, Curtis Park, all the areas around us, Meadowview, all the neighbors that we have, that they all might be safe in their homes and outside them.